Hello again. We all know what time it is at the moment. It is ELF tier list time for the imports. If you're unaware of all the rules, I've got a whole playlist in the description explaining all the rules. Frankfurt Galaxy, the latest today. In fact, I'm dropping this one today, immediately off the snap of their imports. Now, Frankfurt have gone for a very clear and obvious strategy, I think. The average age of these players is a lot more close to their prime. There is not a single import below the age of 24 on their roster this year, which is not always the same across all the leagues. So it's very interesting how they've done it. Obviously, very famously, their head coach came out and said about the 2DB thing that they always run with, and that, of course, has remained the same. So, let's get through it. This is going to be quite a controversial one, I think, because I have been quite vocal that I think Paris is a better team out of the two of them, and we're going to see how that kind of goes with my own little scoring system here. But if you're unfamiliar, all-star, starter, role player, bench player, questions remain. The other noticeable part of this is also size is a very big presence on this import one. Sandro is the shortest import they have, and he's 5'11". You know, it's kind of a weird way to word it. They've gone for experience, they've gone for size, they've gone for ELF, people that have accomplished in ELF as well as people who are accomplished in other leagues. Let's just stop and get into it. Of course, I mentioned him just then. I'm just going to go for Sandro Platzcom with the first one. This was a big surprise to see Sandro leaving his boyhood club in the Red Zero, moving to the Frankfurt Galaxy. The big thing with Sandro, of course, is the injuries. You know, he came in last year after his time with the Giants in the RPP program. He came in, was a little bit knocked up when he started, didn't actually start the first few games. Came in, had only 13 carries for 60 yards, and then got injured for the whole season. So we need to see how he looks in that knee. He is obviously a phenomenal athlete, and when he was on the field, he looked sharp, but it's just injuries are the big thing. Naturally, I think that everyone kind of thinks he could be a starter on every team, and he could be an all-star player. You know, he was a phenomenal athlete. It's just that knee, man. We don't know what he looks like, but when he was on the field, he looked strong. He is obviously, of course, one of the most talented players we have in the league, and for me, I'm going to put him as an all-star. It's going to be very hard for him to be in that conversation with the injuries, but we could see an Adrian Peterson MVP type beat. So I'm hoping for him and for the football fans, we get to see Sandro just in full gear this year, because it was so sad to see him come in and get injured. I'm not going to lie, I was really rooting for him. I thought he was going to break a bunch of rushing records. Didn't really start and then got injured. So I think the football gods were cruel to us in that one. They've given us a second chance, and I'm hoping that we get to see Sandro live up to his obvious potential. Now, this one is also a very strange one. Whereas, Kevin Kaya just announced today, probably minutes after I post this, because insiders. But I think that Kevin Kaya is probably the most interesting person I've had to look at, because he hasn't played very much. He only played 8 games in the CFL. He's been with the Montreal Alouettes. Has 3 catches for 30 yards so far in his 3-year career. He tested not as well as someone like Sagna, who's just gone to the right fire. He didn't test as well as him at the CFL Global Combine. He ran a 4.83. He had 10 reps on the bench press, 4.3 shuttle cone, 6.9 on the short shuttle, which is very good, and then a broad jump of just over 10'2". Obviously a very good athlete, can go and get the ball and climb the ladder. He's long and lengthy. He has 6'3", 195 pounds, 29, so in his physical prime. It's just we haven't seen him. Like, there is 0 tape that I could really find. I found like 1 catch when he was in college at the Caribbean. So it's very, and some of it's like 2015, 2016 tape, just to see what his base is. It's very hard to see where he fits in. But as a French receiver, is he as good as Mahonwu? I don't think so, from what I've seen. I would, it'd have to be compared to someone like Sagna, but I think that he would probably be, for me, probably a starter. He could honestly fit in the questions remain, because there's that little tape. But what I did find was that he can climb the ladder. He's going to be that deep threat. They already have deep threats and other slot guys, so can we see him maybe get a lot of yards? I'm not so sure. I don't know really where he fits into this team. It's very strange to see him come in and there is not really anything to go off of. You know, they have such good homegrown talents of receivers. They've got the Schrum brothers, they've got Nico Strauman, they've also got Markel, who we'll talk about in a minute. So Kevin is going to be a fantastic receiver. There are just a lot of other players that can be taking some of his targets, and we don't know what he's going to bring to the table with Frankfurt. So it's kind of hard to put him in an all-star conversation when I would probably take someone like Anthony or or stagnate over him as Europeans. Hugo Deol, apologies for the Swedish pronunciation, you know how it is. Inside linebacker, played for Dresden last year, had a very successful season, got over 100 tackles, half a sack, got a forced fumble as well. Was one of the actual leading tacklers in the GFL. So you kind of know what you're going to get with him. You know, he's a tackling machine. He does have very good penetration on the line. He takes good angles on the approach. And he also is a very good run support linebacker. That's what he is. Kind of a shorter linebacker. Kind of isn't what you're going to get with coverage. He doesn't move his head and his vision often. I think that would be my critique of his coverage. And then, of course, with he's 6 foot, so he's not like overly small. It's just he has shorter length in his arms. I think when it comes to his leverage and pop and offensive lineman and punt separation, when it comes to getting off blocks, he might struggle in that regard. But for me, I'm going to put Hugo as a role player. I think he's going to fit nicely into the middle of this field. It's just how much can he affect the pass from that position. I will need to see. But he can definitely penetrate the offensive line. I think that he will have an impact on the run. And he will probably be one of those guys that comes up in the tackle sheet very often. Carlos Bruins, most consistent defensive end, I think, in the league. 8.5 sacks in his first year, 8 sacks in his second year, 8 sacks in his third year. Mr. Consistent, has played over 30 games in ELF. Was obviously a global pick and was, I think, 3rd overall. Is one of the better defensive ends in the league. To be honest, going in, I was like, I'm not like, wasn't a huge, not fan. Like, I do like Carlos' game, but I thought going in that he was a little maybe stiff. But then I rewatched the tape and I was like, damn, no, I was wrong. Like, he doesn't have the most bend as a defensive end, but he does have very, very quick hands. He has very quick grappling reset. He's obviously got an experienced rush package, and he knows how to beat people. Like, sometimes it's not always a rush package that comes in, but he knows how to get through people. He knows how to play the outside edge and come in and play 3 techs. He's huge. He's 6'5". He's 258 pounds. 30 years old. Very experienced defensive player. And I think he is probably going to get 8 sacks again. He might get a little bit more, but of course there isn't very much pass rushing presence when it comes to their import class. So is he going to face more double teams and stuff? Probably. He kind of got stuffed a little bit by stronger, longer offensive tackles at times, and with guards, he came in and kind of maybe a bit out-muscled. But Carlos, I was definitely wrong about. I thought that he was not maybe as good as some of the other elite edge rushers, but he is. And I think that he affects the run very well as well. High motor on the run, physical, hits hard. Carlos is probably for me going to be. It's kind of hard for me to say starter or all-star. I think that he's more likely to be an all-star than Kevin. It's just, he is very consistent, but there are other defensive pass rushers that are going to get more production, and he will be like I was. There's other people that might not see Carlos because they don't watch the tape. So I don't think he'll get as much recognition, but he's definitely going to start on most teams, and he's probably going to be in some all-star discussions. It's just there's a lot of other defensive ends that are also going to be in that discussion for all-star. Could he be an all-star? Yes. Do I think he's going to be an all-star? Maybe. If he can get over that 10-mark sack point, then yes. But if he gets another 8, I think he can kind of get lost in the pile of pass rushers, I think, or defensive linemen in general. But there's not very many people that affect the run as well as he does from a defensive endpoint. I'm quite happy him being starter. I know Frankfurt Galaxy fans are probably going to have a massive problem with that. They're Frankfurt Galaxy fans. They have a problem with most things. A lot of people say in the thing. Obviously, then some people aren't a massive fan of Frankfurt Galaxy, but I quite like some of their fans. So I'm sure they will have an issue with a few of the picks on this tier list. Louis Ashunt, we're going to look at next. Apologies if I butcher the last name of anyone that I talk about. My bad. But Louis is another outside linebacker, inside linebacker type. Plays a lot more outside than he does inside. Used to play for Berlin. Spent the last few years in the Galaxy. Had a few injury issues last season, but I think as far as outside linebackers go, he is solid. He quite bouncy, decent in coverage, reads behind the line fairly well. It's just he struggles to get off blocks and he has low motor. And then he can be accused of going for the big hit when maybe it would be safer just to wrap up. We saw it in the Milan game. We saw it in the game against the Enthroners, where he would just kind of go for some big hits. Maybe it wouldn't necessarily work out as well. 6'2", 220, so has good size for the position. One of the more experienced European linebackers. Kind of tough to say where I would put him, because there are a lot of very good French linebackers as well. There's a lot of very good European linebackers, and I think he would probably, for me, fit into here as well. I think that's probably going to get some blowback, but that's what I'm going to go for. One that I don't think is going to get a lot of blowback is Steven Nielsen. Steven Nielsen, I've been quite vocal, is probably my favorite offensive lineman in Europe. I think that he's phenomenal. He's a tank. He's just huge. He's listed at 6'7", 320 pounds. He was a guy that was in the CFL for a while, went back to the Raiders, as a starting tackle for a while. This one's an easy all-star for me. You know, he's excellent. So, not even really. I think that he goes above Sandro just in his likelihood to be an all-star. For me, that Steven Nielsen is the best offensive tackle in Europe. Him and Keanu, I think, are 1A and 1B. You can kind of pick between the two of them. I don't really care who you pick, but both of them are probably going to get all-star. So, Steven Nielsen for me, all-star offensive lineman. He's so big. He's so long. He has obviously great hands, strong. He's a CFL level athlete as well, so you know he has good footwork. If I'm going to be picky, it's probably more redirect. He'll make the block, he'll finish it, and he'll stop. Like, he won't necessarily look for a secondary block, but that's me being nitpicky when it comes to Steven Nielsen. Phenomenal player. Now, these next two DBs, I do have connections within the Frankfurt Galaxy that have told me how well they're doing. I think we're going to go for Divine Buckram first. The youngest of the imports, 6 foot tall as well, 194, listed on ELF. Good frame. He has longer arms than he does height. I think his reach would be longer than his height. He's aggressive on the ball, has speed. For me though, his trigger is fine. Like, it's not elite level. And also his hands aren't as physical as they need to be. But he is a very good defensive back in this league. Obviously played for the Raiders tier, had 3 interceptions last year. I'm going to probably put him as a starter. Probably around there. Yeah, I think that he's a very solid defensive back. I don't think you can go wrong with him. If Divine Buckram's in your team, you're doing good. You know what I mean? It's just there is a lot of competitive corners. You know, Mitch Fetling, you've got Dejan Owens, you've got his teammate that we're going to talk about in a minute. So it's a very competitive position, but he is one of the most elite in that position. Do I think he's going to be all-star? Again, he could creep into it. Same with Carlos. I think that he could creep into all-star, but for me, I'm more comfortable having him as a starter level player. Another former Raider, we'll talk about them both at the same time. Jamel Liggins. So he got first team all-star last season, and a lot of people are very big fans of Jamel Liggins. Same with his press coverage. They say he's an excellent press corner. He's also huge. Like, he's 6'2". He's listed at 203 pounds, but he's a big fucking corner. Long frame, physical, tackles very well. I think my thing that I've discovered through his tape is that he struggles with speedy receivers. You saw Jean Constant in Milan, gave him a lot of problems. He had Malcolm kind of twisted and turned a little bit in that game. He definitely was a problem in that game. And Jean Constant's a very good receiver. There's no shame in being beaten by him. But some people say that he's the best corner in the league, or the best DB in the league. I would disagree. But could he be an all-star? Yes, I think that he can be. It's just they need to kind of hide him away, I think, from these speedier guys. And he plays a lot of off coverage, which I don't think suits him as well as it could do. Because he's such a good press corner, they're not playing him in press. They're playing him 10, maybe fucking 15 yards off. Like, play him in press, let him be physical. And I think he would see a lot more of an advantage. Because, you know, you're playing 10 yards off and with his not great footwork and hips on coming back down to a play, you're going to run a 2-yard hitch and he's going to be out of it. So for me, I think that it's not necessarily a schematical fit last season. I'm not sure if they'll do. From what I've heard, they're getting him on the line a lot more this year. But for me, Jamel Liggins will probably also be a starter. That's kind of, maybe all-star. I do think he's the better of the two. Depends how much I want to piss off Galaxy fans, really. He did have 5 picks last year as well, so he does know how to get the ball. So I'll keep him as all-star. But for me, it's close. But I'll keep him all-star. From one I had to think about all-star to one I don't necessarily have to think about all-star. Mel Castle, obviously the Triple Crown winner last year. Just an athletic monster, had 1,580 yards, 17 touchdowns. If I'm going to be picky, he doesn't have the most diverse route tree. He's not like a route running technician, as some other players are, but he's elite at it. He's just not necessarily a technician. deep threat, great hands, some of the best hands probably in the league. He's a crazy athlete, kind of somebody catch him, but again, I'm being picky. It's Mel Castle. He's going to be an all-star. He will see a decrease in his numbers this year. He will, because of the aforementioned depth at receiver that the Galaxy have. Kevin Kerr, Nick Straman, and the Schoen brothers I mentioned. And then obviously the running game too, they got Sandro, so he's going to get more carries. Or if he doesn't and they split carries, someone else, he's going to manage the injury. Markel's going to get a dip, but Markel is still Markel. So for me, it's going to be another all-star. I think that he's up, actually probably here, is like the second most likely to get an all-star. I think that Steven Nielsen is most likely because he's pound for pound probably a better player than Markel in terms of positional value. A receiver is not worth as much as a tackle. So I'm going to go for Steven Nielsen as being the more likely to get an all-star, but both of them, I would probably bet on them both achieving that. Now, if you watched American football in Europe for any period of time, you probably know who Louch is. Louch, obviously formerly in Milan, been there for years, made the surprise to go to the Galaxy, rejoined with Markel, who played with in the Milano team. We know what Louch is. He's a massive fucking quarterback who can take hits and deliver hits. Maybe is a little bit reckless when he comes to getting out of the pocket, and also reckless when he throws the ball sometimes. Like, some of his decision making isn't great, but he does have an absolute fucking cannon of an arm. I have seen him do a fucking basketball release and it go 60 yards. I think if we're doing superlatives, biggest arm goes to Louch, and it's not even close, like, at all. It's kind of a similar question I ask with Alex on the Insiders podcast is, can you win a championship in 2024 with Sullivan? It's the same question because they both had a very similar, like this season, they had a very similar road to where they are now. Can you win a championship in 2024 with Louch? If we just take a look into his stats, he had 58.84% in his accuracy, which under 60%. Had 25 touchdowns, and the big thing is his 14 interceptions. Like I said, he would just sometimes go, I've got Flores deep, I'm going to hit Flores, or I'm going to get picked off. Like, it was one of the two at times during the offense. He threw the ball a fucking crazy amount of times. In the 12 games he played, he had 498 attempts, by far the most of anyone. It just narrows down to, can he stop creating turnovers, and can he have a little bit more production on a team which is more structured? And I think that he can. I do think that Sullivan I would have under Louch in terms of my top 10 quarterbacks, and Louch is going to be another one of those guys I have just outside the top 5, so I think that he's going to be a starter, probably about here, but he does start over the majority of the league. I'd have him in that top maybe 8 or 9 discussion off the top of my head. So I don't think he narrows down to, like, your Jadrians or your Hennessy's, but he is a very good quarterback, and I think for me he's going to be able to instruct this offense a lot better. The Milan offense was very heavily focused on deep threats, and this one he does have 2 very phenomenal deep threats. He also has a running game, he also has an offensive line, he's also going to be able to have potentially more weapons around him, so he can narrow down the turnovers and have a more diverse offense. Because we know that he can do it. He's won championships in Italy, so we know that he can win championships. It just, can he win one this year? Potentially. They put their faith in him. The people inside the organization really do think that he can win a championship. Do I think they're going to win a championship? No, I don't think they're going to win a championship. I'm putting my heart on my sleeve. I don't think the Galaxy are going to win a championship. I think that Paris are a little bit better in the lines when it comes to their offensive line. I think they're going to be able to maybe outmuscle Frankfurt, but I would not be surprised if I was wrong and Frankfurt come out and make me look like an idiot. It's scouting. As a very wise mentor of mine said, when it comes to scouting in American football, you've got to say something and then pray to fucking God that you're right. So here we are, my tier list for the Frankfurt Galaxy. This one's going to get some blowback. Just off the top of my head, let me have a look, because I know ELFPD are going to do their thing. 5, 10, 15, 20, 28, 36. Ooh, I think it's a little bit lower than some of the other people in the tier list. I think some people are going to get mad, but it's just kind of a difficult one to grade. I do think they built the team very well. It's just, I still have doubts. And some of that German talent is phenomenal, but is it as good as Rhine? Is it as good as Munich? We're going to have to see on that regard. But I hope you guys enjoyed. This was Frankfurt Galaxy. Posted on the same day they did their announcement for Kevin Kerr. Don't ask any questions. Thank you very much. See you later. I've got a bunch of support in the last few videos, which is awesome, especially the Zemon video. That's done really, really well. So I'll do some more of those. If you guys have some players you want me to watch or do a full eval on, that'd be great. I like to do more of the low key ones, but in Flamore's case, I felt that he was underrated, so I wanted to do that. Long-winded goodbye over. Thank you very much. See you later, and goodbye.